our time to look at what the papers are saying on the front pages, and we have Dr. Constance Ikoku here this morning. Constance, good morning.
Good morning, Indy. How are you today?
Good.
Good morning, Adesiwa.
Good morning.
Well, we have to review the papers with us this morning. Emmanuel Azikian, he is a columnist with Vanguard newspaper and former political editor. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Welcome, viewers, to the program. We'll begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day, a couple of top stories that we'll be looking at. Tinubu to visit China in September to seal deals with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. There's also IMF, Nigeria must sustain economic reforms to turn the corner. And Lagbaja raises the alarm over new security challenges in Nigeria. I mean, in presidential circles, this visit to China is being viewed as very high profile, and that it will be of tremendous benefit to Nigeria. At the same time, there will be focus on the long-term implications of those loans and agreements that we usually sign in view of past experiences. Emmanuel.
This visit is coming on against the background of the revelation that Nigeria just recorded a 3.19 growth in the GDP. I think going to China, a country that has recorded almost double-digit growth in recent years, is a welcome development. We are seeing the president apparently tapping into where he believes he can learn some economic lessons. But for many Nigerians, and for me particularly, in as much as I commend the president for the efforts he's putting in, especially seeing that some of the efforts he's putting in are coming true, one would like to say that going to China, going abroad is not the ultimate. For us in Nigeria and for many stakeholders who want him to put his foot on the ground, I would like to say, just if you give me a minute, we have an example in Tanzania. If you Google John Magufuli, who was president of Tanzania between 2015 and 2021, the time the APC came to power too, that president never left the shores of Africa. But within the period he ruled Tanzania, we saw GDP growth, according to IMF statistics, at least 6.6%, an average of 6% GDP growth in Tanzania between 2015 and 2021. And he never shopped out, never left the continent of Africa to look for foreign investors. Investors will come to you. He came with the same mantra, the former Tanzanian president, that the APC came with to power, anti-corruption. He drastically cut down the cost of government. He reduced the number of ministries, he reduced corruption, and we saw an investor started coming into Tanzania. I believe the Nigerian president should please borrow a lesson from what we saw in Tanzania.
You know, the presidential advisor had said that the couple of sectors that they will be looking at: oil and gas, aluminum production, seaport construction, rail construction as well. And one of the questions that people will be asking is, in Nigeria, a lot of these massive projects are executed by foreign companies. There are plans eventually for Nigerian companies to take over. For instance, when you come to road construction, Julius Berger is, one of the largest, in the country, constructing very massive projects. Now the Chinese have taken over rail construction. We have graduates every year from universities in the country. What are the plans eventually to have our own graduates, our own personnel, our own companies being the ones executing these projects? Because at the end of the day, it's employment for the country, for the people. It's also money staying within the country as well.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you've asked the right questions, and I'm sure those in authority will be in a better position to answer these questions, Dr. Ikoku, this morning. But you're right that we've not done enough knowledge transfer. When we have all of this in place, such as these huge companies that come, you wonder, what exactly do we get from it all? It's been nice to have plans of knowledge transfer in the instance that when these companies eventually leave, or we ask them to leave, whenever that happens, we have our own people on ground who can step into those shoes. But I just wanted to add to what Mr. Azike has said this morning, to remember that President Bola Tinubu is going to China not just as president of Nigeria, but he's also going in his capacity as the chairman of ECOWAS to attend the FOCAC summit in Beijing. And I think that a lot of people will also say that this visit comes at a critical time. As you would recall, the whole issue with the $70 million debt between the arbitration issue between the Zhongshan company and the Ogun State government of 2013. This will present the president an opportunity to speak with President Xi Jinping on this matter. But, you know, we've seen a president that has turned himself to a chief marketing officer. He has done most of the heavy lifting for his ministers, particularly those of trade, investment. The president continues to sell the country to these investors, but what we get from it is left, you know, to be seen, even though the authorities say we are beginning to reap the fruits. Right.
Let's look at Guardian newspaper. $48 per barrel production cost drowns 60% Nigeria oil earnings. There are also other top stories there. Food insecurity, FG banks on dry season farming as flood devastates northeast. Tinubu to meet Jinping over road rail projects again, the Chinese trip. Residents of Rivers community flee over fresh oil spill. There's also arrest. Nigerian CSOs unions urged to reject authoritarianism under Tinubu. On the $48 per barrel production cost, I mean, indications at that the production cost target of NMPCL was to produce oil at $10 per barrel. The aspiration has not been achieved. Instead, it's been hampered by overhead costs, insecurity, inefficiency, corruption, regulatory challenges. It just shows how deep of a mess we have in the oil industry, Emmanuel.
$48 per barrel is way above the average cost of production of oil across the world. It averages about $10, and in Saudi Arabia, I think it's about $5 to produce a barrel. So what you see here is the effect of corruption, which has not been addressed. You have, and mark you are adding the cost of sustaining thousands of workers in refineries who are not working. You are marking the cost of recently it was revealed that the NNPC average staff, an average emolument compensation for an NNPC staff is about 24 million naira per year. So these are issues, per month I mean. So these are issues that have aggravated our cost of production. It is the highest in the world. The only country that rivals with it, the only situation that rivals with it is the production of shale oil in the US, which is just a little bit above that. And it's not shale, we're not getting oil from shale here. So I think this is something that the Minister of Petroleum needs to quickly address. It has to be, it was 3 years ago that the present management vowed to bring down the cost of production to a reasonable $10 per barrel. But then what do we see? It has ballooned up to $48 per barrel, which is not acceptable. There is no other country in the world that produces oil, a barrel at such an exorbitant rate.
The group CEO of NMPCL, Mele Kyari, had launched a campaign because 7.4% of our budget goes, the personnel cost of the oil industry as a whole. And he says this is unacceptable. But as we can see, it hasn't achieved, or it hasn't been able to succeed in this campaign.
Now the alarming or disgraceful thing is that when you look at countries like Libya, war-torn Libya, $1 cost of production. You look at Angola that discovered oil just the other day, $20. Then you go to, Brazil, in 2014 it was 70. They moved it down in 2022, last 2 years, to 35. And this takes 60% of production cost. And like you just pointed out, corruption, double regulatory challenges. One really wonders, and ours is the cost is all over the world. So one really wonders what we are doing. What is it that countries like Libya, Saudi Arabia is between $2 and $8. What is it that they're doing? that is different, that we can copy from, that we can learn from. Over the years, I mean, we started producing oil before Angola, but here we are.
Well, a lot more on that story in due course. Let's look at Daily Trust this morning. MPOX spreads to 19 states, cases now 40. No timeline yet for Ronsanya report implementation. And Labour Party in fresh crisis as OT summons emergency NEC meeting. I mean, it's astonishing that after the announcement by the president that the Ronsanya report will be implemented, that was back in February, that announcement was heralded as a bold move to cut cost of governance. But here we are, there is no time frame. Emmanuel, what do you think is happening? Why are different governments afraid to implement this very crucial report?
Well, this is quite disheartening, given the fact that the Oronsoye Committee was inaugurated far back as 2010 by President Jonathan. Succeeding governments have sought to shy away from the implementation of this report, which is about cutting down the cost of governance. But it seems as if political actors everywhere, they want to sustain this elaborate form of governance that we are having in the country. It doesn't work in every respect. And the way the Chief of Staff put it out yesterday is also not very, he didn't come out with a positive approach because he could not set any timeline because he is the chief custodian of the affairs of the president, and he could not put a date, he could not put a time frame to the implementation of something that the administration had vowed to implement months back. So it's disappointing. One would call on the administration to please have a rethink, cut down the cost of governance so that Nigeria can move forward. Thank you.
Well, we'll look at Punch newspaper as well. In Punch, governors slammed for wasting 160 billion naira on unviable airports. There's also Abure Otion coalition costs over Labour Party NWC tenure. External auditors to examine NNPC 2.6 trillion naira subsidy claim AMCON set to sell Ibadan Disco. I mean, flights of fancy, in regard to the airports. Nasarawa Yobe others beg federal government to take over airports shunned by airlines. I mean, there are 6 states, Ekiti, Ebonyi, Jigawa, Yobe, Nasarawa, and Bayelsa have spent over 160 billion on their airports. It's interesting that some of these airports are now asking the federal government to take over. Shouldn't there be penalties for embarking on such profligate projects, wasting public resources only to come back and ask the federal government to help them out, Emmanuel? Well,
I think I'll agree with you that there should be penalties. The political actors, the governors who inaugurated these airports, most of them for their personal aggrandizement, most of them for their personal comfort, did these projects just out of, without proper planning. I do think that there should be sanctions. You cannot be building airports everywhere, airports that are not viable. Apart from of the states that have built airports, I think probably only Delta or maybe one other state have a viable airports, and that is because they let it out on franchise. So I do think these political actors, the governors who inaugurated these airports, should be punished. There should be a way of sanctioning them, maybe from the humongous pension benefits. It should be withheld.
This one, yeah. So the information here is that 80% of the revenue generated by the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria come from 3 airports, Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. So the rest are just there.
It is ridiculous. You know, just before Emmanuel was highlighting what the sanctions should look like, I was thinking, how do you really sanction these officials? But I think that's a great point. You know, withhold their pension and all of that. Yeah. But beyond that, I think that this calls into question priority. How do we prioritize, in this country? How did the state governments, come to the idea, the notion that these unviable airports was what we were going to spend 160 billion naira on? Imagine if those 160 billion naira went into other things for their state. it also calls to question, you know, ourselves as the people. Some people will say the Nigerians have become so docile when it comes to politics, you know, and everything that concerns them. We just leave it to a few people who govern us. At the point that these state governments budgeted these airports, what happened to we questioning why the airports? You did not ask the people what they wanted, but you went ahead and built an airport which you are now begging the federal government to take over. So I think that, you know, there's enough blame to go around, but particularly for these officials who govern in the comfort of their wherever they keep themselves and believe that they have all the answers to the people. It shows the lack of communication between those who lead and those who are governed. It shows the lack of priority of what we need as a society. I mean, I can go on and on.
Well, let's look at the international headlines. A Citizen newspaper from South Africa, knives out for Joburg mayor. It's not. It's been reported here that a document leaked on his proposal to employ foreigners, and this has caused a problem for him. Mayor Dada Morero, his party has turned on him, and also he has also been making noises about tightening up finances, and some people are not happy with him. I mean, Morero is just a few weeks on the job after his predecessor, Kabelo Gwamanda, was forced to resign. So now he's already hit the rocks. His proposal is being seen by not acceptable, and looks like he's now in the middle of the usual politicking that goes with offices, Emmanuel.
This is real politics. It is politics, and maybe politics of xenophobia. You will recall that just recently, Nigerian-born Chidima Adesina was first out of a beauty pageant in that country. And this proposal to recruit is a proposal actually to recruit some policemen, foreigners, as to break the language barrier, to enable police intelligence, to gather more intelligence from foreigners who are suspected to be involved in crime. So this actually might look like a good proposal, but political rivals of the new mayor now want to bring him down. And it shows you the context, it shows you the direction of the mainstream South African politicians, the politics of xenophobia. Just remember, just a day or so ago, former President Thabo Mbeki wrote a strongly worded opinion on one of the national newspapers there, in which he was slamming the South Africa's Minister of Youth, for spearheading the witch hunt that forced Chidima Adesina out of the beauty pageant. He was trying to redirect his fellow citizens to the fact that Nigeria was a collaborator in the liberation of the country from apartheid, and telling them that they should be open-hearted, that they should not be like Britain, England, which is driving away foreigners. So I think the actions against the Johannesburg mayor, they are unwarranted, and it's stems of xenophobia.
Well, let's look at Daily Graphic from Ghana. Bawumia commissions 10,000 YEA artisans. They receive starter packs for businesses. These are youths that have been trained in different vocations under the Youth Employment Agency. And then let's move on to iNewspaper. Starmer's plan for a softer Brexit starts in Germany today. The British Prime Minister is visiting Germany in order to make sure that the corner is turned on British-EU relations. And then we have the Times newspaper. Airport cannabis smuggling soars as drug is legalized abroad. Emmanuel, let's stay with iNewspaper in terms of Starmer. Brexit has hit the British badly, and this time around, Keir Starmer is saying we have to renegotiate, discuss again the terms of relations with EU because we are not an island unto ourselves. Emmanuel.
Well, Britain is not, though they had always tried to look at England, the UK had in the past tried to look at itself as being an island. The reality of globalization makes it that everyone must deal with his neighbors around. So I think what the Prime Minister is doing now, it's welcomed, is the fact that Britain has to, you see, the economy is not independent. The greatest partners, the closest partners to the UK are their fellow neighbors in the EU. So the withdrawal from the EU at just some few years ago was something that was not very, he believes, and I think some of them now realize that it wasn't well thought of. How to renegotiate it to give the UK a softer landing is what the Prime Minister is about doing, and one wishes him all the best in his negotiations with the Germans. And I hope the Germans, who are also cousins to the British, especially to the English royal family, should please have an open heart in welcoming and see how they can help their cousins.
And finally, indeed, to a daily graphic on the commissioning of 10,000 artisans. You know, these days everybody wants to have a paper degree, and most people come out without actual skills. Opening this area or this sector is a way to also create jobs. Not everybody will have a university degree.
Yeah, the fantastic thing about it is that the government is futuristic. They're looking at the youths, and of course, you know, they say an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So they are concentrating on the youths, and that's the great thing about it. I mean, you couldn't have hit the nail better on the head by trying to get the youths to get busy in Ghana. That will be what we will call it today on the paper review, local and international. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Dr. Constance, and thank you, Emmanuel Azikin, for being here this early in the morning. The next program is TMS, the morning show, and as you know, every day indeed does matter here on Arise News. I am Ndi Amogo, thanking you for watching.
Good morning, I am Adesua Omorwan.